Oh, the peaks! Oh God, yeah, great big beasts of a loco, weren't they? The Class 45s and 46s.
Peaks were quite common in the Midlands. One of the few places that I was actually allowed to go to, or at least could afford to go to, was the Midland Main Line, and I used to see them, well, twice an hour at least.
I quite liked to watch the peaks on the Midland Main Line at that time.
And I do remember one afternoon particularly, it'll always stick in my mind, that I saw a peak coming onto Shed from the Manchester direction. And it was only when it approached it I noticed something different about it, and it was actually D6. And that was the first of those 10 namers that I'd actually seen, and it was incredible. I remember, and it's always a thrill in it, underlining it in your book, and it's the only one of the 10. And I think for that reason, Whernside always has a special memory for me.
I think what happened was that by the mid 80s they were well in decline. The HSTs had appeared on more and more passenger services, and the peak started to pick up a lot more freight workings, particularly ballast jobs. A bit sad really for a thing that was really a 90-mile-an-hour mainline engine.
I like the Class 33s personally, and the 26s and 27s, of course. They had a sort of an atmosphere about them. They looked right somehow to me, and they sounded great.
There were nicer 33s, weren't they? I mean, they came into their own in the latter years, really, I always thought.
.33s you could always tell because the route indicators were the only thing that lit up on them, because this was the days before headlights. And if you were waiting for a 50 or anything and one of these used to appear, you used to curse because it was always late if it was a 33 on the front.
One of the lingering memories I have of that era was how the 33 soldiered on stock trains well into the 80s on the Cardiff to Weymouth, was it Cardiff to Portsmouth trains? That was a lovely trip through some beautiful countryside with proper trains, proper locos and blue and grey coaches.
I remember one trip particularly. I mean, I think it must have been about June '87. I did a full day and a full night travelling with the 33s, because in those days, you see, there were trains that you could use at night. That was the beauty of it. I remember there was a 21:45 Bristol Southampton, which came back as a 1:55 Southampton to Bristol, and you could spend a lot of the night on that train with a Crumpton. It was ETH, obviously, so it was nice and warm usually. And again, you got a compartment, and that got you back into Bristol for about 5 o'clock or something like that, 4 o'clock. And then you could have a trip to Weymouth, and then, I spent the whole day up and down on the Portsmouths and the Weymouths. And that's not that long ago, is it? It's only, 15 years ago? It seems like an age, doesn't it?
We had a family holiday to Christchurch in 1978, and I spent the whole week in the company of these things.
They didn't get the following of the big diesels, the big glamorous things like the Deltics and the Westerns, and yet they were a smashing little loco, and I do believe that at this point in time, anyway, there's still a couple working for DRS.
thing about these locomotives was the fact that you just didn't see them in the Midlands, hardly ever. So when they did turn up, you can imagine what a stir it caused.